Hey, so tonight we're back with our literacy chats. So we're just going to read the introduction to the Fountas and Pinnel book. Yesterday we read not the acknowledgments, but I think the foreword. So today we're just going to read the introduction. Okay. So the last 20 years have brought sweeping changes in literacy education, new information on how children learn language and become literate, the writing process and the whole language movement, the negative aspects of ability grouping, and the growing popularity of children's literature captured the attention of committed educators. New ideas were translated into policy, and teachers began implementing changes, sometimes with the extensive professional development and rich array of materials, but often without those essential support systems. In many places, teachers formed their own support groups and pressed on toward change. And changes took place. Teachers used more and more varied text to support reading. They used children's literature instead of controlled vocabulary texts. And they created communities of learners who were of varying ages and experiences, and they placed more emphasis on learners' construction of knowledge through their own discoveries. These changes, while positive, have left teachers with the dilemma: how can I provide young readers with materials and instruction that fit their individual levels of development? If the teacher's job is to take each child from where he is to where he needs to go in reading, then that teacher must assess individuals with a class of 20 to 25 youngsters. Grouping for instruction makes sense. As teachers, we want to make learning manageable, yet avoid the negative aspects of grouping. We want to be sure children are working with materials that help them take the next step in learning to read, and the books they read should offer just enough challenge to support problem solving, but be easy enough to support fluency and meaning. But providing appropriate text is only the beginning. The critical element is the skillful teaching that helps young readers learn the effective strategies they need to become independent. This book addresses the decisions teachers must make regarding all aspects of guided reading: observing reading behavior, gathering evidence of mental processing, grouping and regrouping children, selecting books, introducing stories, supporting reading, and managing learning activities. The ideas in this book are drawn from many years of classroom research on early literacy. We have worked with comprehensive literacy programs in hundreds of school districts in many parts of the country. Based on our own experience and research, we describe best practice in guided reading for kindergarten through third grade, placing it within the perspective of a thematic integration of reading and writing. We also focus on specific guidelines for forming and reforming reading groups, selecting and introducing texts, and teaching for strategies. Multicultural texts are emphasized and are included in our descriptions of the classroom book collection. We can also provide examples of management tools and suggest ways to help children who need extra support. Chapter 1 is an overview of the assumptions and procedures of guided reading. Because we wish to emphasize that guided reading is not an isolated process, chapters 2 and 3 look at literacy learning, the foundation on which the teacher makes instructional decisions about guided reading, and present an overview of a balanced literacy program. Chapters 4 and 5 present practical ideas for organizing the literacy environment and managing the process of guided reading, key elements in making instruction work. Chapters 6 and 7 return to the important concept of assessing children's learning, presenting techniques for observing reading and writing behavior as a tool for making instructional decisions. The running record, the most powerful tool for fine-tuning guided reading, is described in detail in Chapter 7. Dynamic grouping is described in Chapter 8. Chapter 9 helps teachers create and use a leveled set of books. Chapters 10 and 11 delve more deeply into the specific procedures of guided reading, selecting and introducing text, and teaching for strategies during and after the children have read the selected book or piece of written material. Chapter 12 specifically describes how teachers can support children's level of effective processing. Chapter 13 focuses on children's learning about letters and words and on how teaching changes over time as children's knowledge grows. Chapter 14 deals specifically with how guided reading changes from its beginnings in kindergarten through third grade. That's interesting. Chapter 14 deals specifically with how guided reading changes from its beginnings in kindergarten through third grade. Chapter 15 emphasizes appropriate safety nets for children who are having difficulty learning to read. I actually think that's a really important chapter for the Black community. In writing this book, we recognize the importance of professional development and collegial support. Continued learning is essential if readers are to accomplish their goals. Each chapter suggests professional development experiences that will help both experienced and pre-service teachers develop an effective guided reading program. The appendixes are practical tools, a leveled book list, icons to use to manage guided reading, folds up letter books, an alphabet chart, a record sheet for assessment. Our book list is always being revised and new books are added regularly. The best way to test such a list for teachers to use these books with children and reflect on the result. We invite you to use the form in Appendix K to give us your feedback, and we will use your input in future revisions of our list. Our work is based on the theory that learning is a constructive activity. Ultimately, readers discover the principles of literacy and make them their own. But as Marie Claire said, they do not have to do it alone. The primary classroom is the laboratory in which children discover literacy, but the most essential element in that process is the teacher who provides the raw material, demonstrations, explanations, appropriate materials, feedback, and encouraging and revealing interactions. The book focuses on helping children begin to read and become strategic users of literacy. Skillful teachers make it easy for the child to make the demanding journey to literacy rapidly, joyously, and in good company. Good first teaching is the foundation of education and the right of every child. Great. Well, I'm glad we made it through the introduction. Thank you for listening.